So you can take some questions here for the artists.
Do you want to pass them up?
Oh, you can go ahead.
What made you want to do this in the first place with lasers and soap?
As a matter of fact, what we... Wait a second.
It's on.
So, we were curious about the primordial soup. As it happens, that the foamy origins of life, of living cells, are direct ancestor of the membranes of living cells. So we wanted to have a very close look at how that might have occurred. And what's really strange here is that instead of a laser beam going directly through the optical medium as it would, let's say, through glass or other transparent liquids, water, when it enters a soap film membrane, it's as though it's traversing a waveguide antenna. It gets trapped inside, it gets swallowed by the film, and it breaks up into micron-thin optical tracts. And it's these optical tracts that create these billion-fold magnifications of the microscopic and nanoscopic molecular interactions happening inside of the film.
What makes the show different every time? How do you control the flow of the music and the video?
There's no video.
Yeah, there's no video.
The laser light.
Yes, the laser light. Well, it's a physical process, so the show is different every time. The sound, however, reacts to the luminosity and the movement of light. So sometimes when bubbles pop, you can see change in sound, for example. So we try to make sound and light behave synchronously to create this kind of synesthetic wholeness of experience.
Is that controlled by the computer or by you?
No, the computer only controls the soundtrack, but the laser projection is not controlled by the computer. It is controlled by life, by us.
Okay.
And what I'm trying to do the whole performance, I try to aim the laser to enter this soap skin, and exactly that's why you are able to get this dome shape, this 360-degree projection, because as soon as the laser enters the bubble, it's like in an optical wire, it fills the entire surface of the bubble skin. And you can see a lot of this surface waves, so it's a very fine interaction of light trembling, creating solidons, these very tiny surface waves in the soap skin. And the peacock feathers that you probably have seen at the very end, where you can see dark and bright rings, these are actually the wavelengths of light itself. It's we're talking about 700 nanometers, 400 nanometers, and you are able to see it without any optics, just with the help of soap film.
Can you make Mars with the laser light?
Excuse me, could you repeat that question?
Can you make Mars with the laser light?
Planet Mars.
Oh, Mars. Well,
That's a very nice question, because actually a model of a soap skin is a model of the universe. and some mathematical calculations. So it's not like a solid planet, it's not like a rock, but it is more like the entire body of the universe that expands and contracts and collapses at some point. So it's much more similar to the universe than to a planet, what you've just seen.
Are you surprised there's no symmetry? I didn't see any symmetry. Is that surprising or not surprising, and why?
The breaking of symmetry is something, I guess, that we have all become quite familiar with. It is the breaking of symmetry that not only led to life. The breaking of symmetry already occurs on the level of elementary particles as soon as a neutron decides to go left instead of right. But we do find symmetry nonetheless. There's a symmetry in the way that the soap bubbles cluster together. There's a particular angle at which they can be conjoined. I guess it all depends on the balance between symmetry and symmetry breaking.
Another question. Have you ever experienced anything you would call language in this show?
Now that is a very profound question. If you consider language to be something that is nonverbal, then for sure, yes. I think that language begins way before verbality. It goes without saying that when you have one of the peculiarities of soap film and what makes it so similar to the lipid membranes of living cells is that it is a very peculiar combination of basic and acidic components. It is that which allows them to interlock together into a film in the first place. I would think that there's a language for sure. There's a navigation of positive and negative charges that allows for this kind of salty acid sandwich to arise.
Kind of comment, kind of question. So the lipid structure that we're looking at there, would you say that's related to like a...
It's actually a proto-lipid. It is not, yeah.
Right,
we're not using any organic chemistry here.
Okay, but is that structure like relatable to like the neuron, lipid thing? I mean, of course, the difference between the water and the oil, the structures, has to be in some way. But I mean, in your answer to the previous question, like that language or that barrier, that thing that happens there, it seems similar to that structure to me. And then my other comment or question was, is there any particular tones or particular sounds that seem to resonate better with the bubbles than others? Like, has any tone ever arisen that seemed to hold them together longer, break them apart quicker? And I've just wondered about that.
Those are very good questions. Yeah, I mean, sure, the fatty acid quality is something that lends itself well to certain kinds of frequencies, to certain timbres. There's feedback going on. That's something that's important to note, that not only is are the sounds being triggered by the imagery that we're observing, but also those sounds happen to, especially the lower frequencies, the bass frequencies, they cause this very, very fragile, very sensitive soap bubble skin to vibrate, and that that changes the sound significantly, and of course it changes the behavior of the film. So we have definitely ran the gamut of all sorts of sound textures. And definitely because of the fact that, you know, although the origins of sounds, especially in the, let's say, the digital as well as the analog domain can be, you can have all kinds of sawtooth waves and square waves, et cetera, but at the end of the day, as soon as something comes out of a loudspeaker, it is sinusoidal, just like any kind of acoustic wave is sinusoidal, and we find that sinuses work very well with the curvature of these structures. And there are lots of field recordings here at the basis of the sounds. So we like the idea that you're listening to a lot of standing waves, which are also the behavior of a specific membrane. Like, for example, of a metallophonic instrument, of a gong. The way that a soap film hemisphere is vibrating is very similar to the way in which a gong or say a vibraphone is resonating.
Why did it die out so fast at the end?
Yeah, it's
That's an existential question.
Turn off life support.
Yes, it's.
Death always comes suddenly.
That's not necessary.
Let's not ruin life.
Hi. So throughout the show, throughout the performance, there's, to me personally, a seemingly expressive narrative throughout everything. I was just wondering if that's something that you try to purposefully evoke throughout the show, throughout what I imagine the movements you were doing, or how you're manipulating the film, or the laser, or the soundtrack. Is there an expressed, a purposeful narrative throughout, or is that something that you just sort of harness or evoke spontaneously? Or any thoughts on that, I guess?
So, for me personally, the main narrative is about, let's say, non-Euclidean geometry. So we very much build the world in our head with straight lines and, you know, bricks, and the way humans build everything around them. It's all, you know, this Euclidean flat geometry, and here you are confronted with a world which is all curvilinear, and it exhibits this extremely weird geometry and behavior. So for me, the main narrative is traveling into this non-Euclidean world. And I'm personally very much fascinated by Riemann, German mathematician from the 19th century, who was writing about things that are extremely difficult to imagine, you know, like zeta function. And some of these very complex mathematical concepts that maybe will sometimes allow us to solve the mystery of the prime numbers, they could be expressed graphically as real spaces. So for me, the main narrative of this performance is about the travel into non-Euclidean world.
But at the same time, there's indeed an exchange between spontaneity and so-called free will. We only have a certain capacity to tame the phenomena that are taking place because they're so nonlinear. have a tendency to build meaning out of what we call narrative, but at the same time, we're always searching for spontaneity. We're always searching for surprises that will perhaps be more significant guideposts within the course of the performance.
How long have you guys been working together?
Approximately 20 years.
How did you discover this kind of art form with the hybrid kind of live but also digital work?
So we wanted to work with ephemeral media. So we wanted to work with waves and vibrations, because if you look at the science of the last 200 years, the picture of the world that it paints or narrates is very different from our everyday sensations. So we wanted to create an art form where you can enter this wave of vibrations where nothing is solid. So in the beginning we were most interested with light. And light is some of the most mysterious things, and for a painter, for any artist to understand what is light and how to tame light or represent light is the biggest challenge. Because light itself cannot be seen, but it makes all other things visible, and it vibrates at extremely fast speeds. So this work is another exercise on how you can eavesdrop on the behavior of light.
Why are you sitting up there?
Well, as it happens, our position is very precisely calculated. We have to be more or less at the beginning of this dome screen that is above you.
Just like this projector over there.
Yeah. There is the light that we are using. Unfortunately, is slightly dangerous, and we don't want it to get into anybody's eyes. And at the same time, we want to be able to fill the entire screen. So we could be sitting there where this other projector is, but unfortunately, it can't be dismantled. And yeah, one of our collaborators, an artist in the Netherlands, created an inflatable space where this whole system is lowered, where everybody is lying on the ground, and where the projection starts essentially just above your eyelashes. But here we have to start where the screen starts.
How long did this take to make?
So this work we first did in 2007, and since that time the biggest challenge in this piece was the power of the laser and how affordable it can be for an artist to get a very powerful laser. So our first performances of this piece were with a very weak laser, where you can barely see this very intricate structures. And it was, yes, but since then we acquired a few new lasers, and every time the power of the laser is higher, you can see more and more resolution, more and more details, because what a laser light is, it's completely coherent light. So the white light that we're used to, it's all different frequencies mixed and all in different phase. So it's, yes, the light from the sun. So it's a very noisy light. But the laser light, so the wavelengths are the same. It's all the same frequency, all the same phase. So it's like a lot of soldiers marching exactly symmetrically with the same leg. So because this light is so coherent and has this kind of internal symmetry, it can crawl into minute landscape and can show you this microscopic landscape of soap skin. And soap skin, when it gets very, very thin, it's only 1 water molecule thick. And you cannot, it's very difficult to see something like this with white light, but with laser, it becomes very, very vivid. So the challenge for this piece was getting a hold of a powerful enough laser. And in the beginning we did it just with a green laser. Now we're doing it with a white RGB laser. So we have 3 different frequencies, red, green, and blue. But because they mix, they create all these different shades and overtones and purples and yellows and all these beautiful colors.